Everybody, welcome to the show. Round the Nation right here, TYT Nation. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. Welcome to a great Tuesday show. Got a lot of stuff for you, including Jeff Sessions and breaking Keurigs. Now, I know. We're going to have some fun. That's a fun story. I love it. Of course, we've got a lot of other stuff, too. Rampant inequality, Mitch McConnell versus Roy Moore, and Omarosa. Fun story on Omarosa, and a case of bipartisanship that, of course, will leave you angry. Of course. But anyway, like I said, welcome to the show. Great show planned for you guys today. Those of you watching the live stream, though, I'm a little bit late, and I do apologize for that. There's sometimes where my software just slows down. When I, the software that I use to edit videos, edit clips. So, and we've got some clips to go with today's show, today's stories. So, anyway, that said, I'm not going to dwell on it too long because we got a lot of stuff to go to. But before I get into the stories, I want to thank a couple of patrons. New ones, Julie Lindner and Dan. So, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Dan. And thank you to everybody who supports us on Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation. That's how you help fund the show and keep us going. All right. Before I get into the rest of the stories, too, I do want to remind everybody, please give us a like and share. That helps the show get out to everybody. And it also helps with engagement and the YouTube algorithm so that we get found more. So that's kind of how that works. I don't really know a ton about the algorithm. All I know is that there is an algorithm out there that controls how many people view your stuff and how relevant you are in search results and et cetera, et cetera. And we kind of want to play that to our advantage. All right. Now, let's go into our first story. Let's talk about Jeff Sessions, as that just happened. So, and one of his excuses. I love this story. All right. Now, Attorney General Jeff Sessions has an interesting excuse on why he didn't report certain meetings that he had in which some Trump campaign officials had admitted to wanting to reach out to the Russian government for help with the campaign to specifically dig up dirt on Hillary Clinton. Now, what's interesting about that is, why would you want a foreign government to help you dig up dirt when Clinton was bad enough as a candidate already? But again, that's semantics aside, I guess. Now, earlier, of course, today, Jeff Sessions was grilled by the House Judiciary Committee on these meetings and, well, of course, get a load of this excuse.
I would like to address recent news reports regarding meetings during the campaign attended by George Papadopoulos and Carter Page, among others. Frankly, I had no recollection of this meeting until I saw these news reports. I do now recall that the March 2016 meeting at the Trump Hotel that Mr. Papadopoulos attended, but I have no clear recollection of the details of what he said at that meeting. After reading his account and to the best of my recollection, I believe that I wanted to make clear to him that he was not authorized to represent the campaign with the Russian government or any other foreign government for that matter. But I did not recall this event, which occurred 18 months before my testimony of a few weeks ago. And I would gladly have reported it had I remembered it, because I pushed back against his suggestion that I thought may have been improper. As for Mr. Page, while I do not challenge his recollection, I have no memory of his presence at a dinner at the Capitol Hill Club or any passing conversation he may have had with me as he left the dinner.
I'm sorry, but I do not recall such a meeting. And if I had, I would have reported it because that would have been improper. Okay. So, wait, you didn't think that that was worthy of remembering, right? Now, both Papadopoulos and Page saying, hey, guys, you know, it'd be a great idea. Let's do collusion with the Russian government. In fact, I know some people. We can hook you up with dirt on Hillary Clinton. You don't think that you would remember that? You're the Attorney General. You're like a rule of law kind of guy. You might know that's like, wait a minute, that's a bad idea. Now, to be fair, that's what he's saying. He's like, oh, well, when I heard it, I said that was a bad idea. It's a terrible idea. Maybe we shouldn't go in that direction. But you completely forgot that they brought it up? Oh, no, I'm not buying that. I mean, apparently to him, either that was so unimportant that even though after he pushed back because it was such an absurd idea, you completely forgot about it. Not buying it. Not buying it. He continues.
It was a brilliant campaign, I think, in many ways, but it was a form of chaos every day from day one. We traveled sometimes to several places in one day. Sleep was in short supply, and I was still a full-time senator with a very full schedule. During this year, I've spent close to 20 hours testifying before Congress. Before today, I have been asked to remember details from a year ago, such as who I saw on what day, in what meeting, and who said what to when. In all of my testimony, I can only do my best to answer your questions as I understand them and to the best of my memory.
Which apparently sucks. But I love how he started that out. Oh, the Trump campaign, which was so wonderful, by the way, was also so incredibly chaotic that I just forgot about the collusion between us and Russia. I'm so sorry, y'all. I just can't remember. And so it's the I don't remember defense strong with Jeff Sessions. That's what he's going with. I don't know. I just forgot. I didn't get a lot of sleep and all that stuff. Again, this might be true that he told Carter Page and Papadopoulos to, hey, knock it off with the whole Russian thing, okay? We don't really need their help. No, we don't want to see the Russians. We don't want their help. That would be super illegal. Let's not go in that direction. And, okay, if he did that, credit to him. But the fact that he's conveniently forgotten about all those different meetings that he has had with Russian officials and people in the campaign and sitting in meetings where people right inside the Trump campaign said, hey, you know what, that'd be a great idea. Let's reach out to Putin. It seems a little shady. Either this guy's got this huge gap in memory and can't remember where he put his shoes or his keys or his wallet, or whether or not he helped collude with Russia, or he's got a little bit of a truth problem. Either way, it's not good for him or the country. Hilarious. So, let's roll into the next story. Again, we're gonna have some more fun here. Conservatives are really, really angry, and they've decided to take it out on their coffee machines. Now, this is in response to several advertisers pulling out from Sean Hannity's show after he defended accused pedophile Roy Moore. Now, this, of course, is based on a recent New York Times expose in which Moore was found to have molested a 14-year-old girl when he was in his 30s, and that he was known all around the town of Gadsden for dating teen girls. Now, in response to that, of course, a lot of conservatives had decided to rally around Moore, and I'm not talking about the politicians. That's a different story. A lot of the voters actually have rallied around Moore, and again, a lot of Alabama politicians. Now, they've used excuses ranging from, yeah, but it was a consensual relationship, which again, you really can't, because 14 in that case, yes, the other girls, the 16-year-old, the 18-year-old, the 19-year-old, okay. In those situations, yes, there would be any sort of contact would be consensual in nature. Fine. But this was a 14-year-old. She is below Alabama's age of consent at the time, which was 16 years old. So there's that defense, shredded. Then they said, well, you know what? It was in the Bible, Mary and Joseph. Well, you know, Mary was a virgin. The whole thing about the virgin birth kind of destroys that narrative, because if it's a virgin birth, then it means that Joseph never freaking touched her. So again, that's a super weird defense, but they're actually using that as a defense of Roy Moore. And then the next one, of course, is, well, yeah, but he had his mother's her mother's permission. And okay. Of course, other defenses that I've heard is, well, they're lying. They're these women who we don't believe at all are working for the Democrats. Really? A lot of these accusers also have voted for Republicans in the past, and many of them actually voted for Trump last election. So these people are conservative. But it turns out that, hey, guess what? Conservatives can be victims of other conservatives. I know, it's a strange thing, right? Now, of course, Sean Hannity goes on his show and he's defending Roy Moore, of course, despite a lot of Republican politicians that are now distancing themselves from him. And because of that, Sean Hannity's show is starting to lose sponsors. Now, that's interesting. According to USA Today, Keurig, Realtor.com, 23andMe, Eloquy, and Nature's Bounty all pulled their ads from Hannity's television show. Now, apparently, that was enough to piss off lots and lots of conservatives. So let me kind of lay this out first. Let me give some context to the situation. So there's a Republican that's running for Senate in Alabama who has a history of dating teen girls. He was known for it, and there's rumor that he was actually banned from a mall from constantly harassing some of the teen girl shoppers there. So, all that, right? One of these accusers happened to be underage at the time, where he had undressed her and tried to get her to touch his junk. Okay. Very creepy. Okay. Now, this comes out, and Hannity's like, how dare you criticize an alleged pedophile? Wait, aren't you the guys that talked about Pizzagate? I mean, look, yes, I realize that was more pushed a little bit more by Alex Jones, but I thought you guys wanted to protect the kids. You want to protect the kids against the pedophiles, which you think are all the transgender people. Well, this statement from Covington County GOP Chairman William Blocker kind of says it all. He said, quote, "There's no option to support Doug Jones. The Democratic nominee, when you do that, you are supporting the entire Democrat Party." Basically, he's saying, look, I'd rather support an alleged pedophile over a Democrat. That's pretty bad. And now it's been shown that they would rather apparently break their stuff than to take a stand against this same alleged pedophile. On Twitter, actually, many have used the hashtag boycott Keurig. And some even posted videos of themselves smashing their Keurig machines. I want to show you that in this compilation, which is awesome.
Now, it's always important to wear protective lenses anytime you're training like this. And you really can't hit golf balls in an enclosed environment like this, so I believe this will work just fine. Now, first thing you want to do is set up your ball, get a nice wide stance.
They know all about wide stance.
Firm grip, and you want a good full body turn, one piece takeaway so that you can really crush this thing. Now here we go. Let's see what we can do with this thing.
Piece of shit.
Wait. Oh boy. Oh.
Oh boy.
I can't help it. The slow-mo always gets me. I'm super entertained. Look, I own a Keurig too, but I'm super entertained at smashing things. And I'm also super entertained at how dumb this is, right? Dude, you already bought the machine. You paid for it. They already have your money. They've already made money off of you. And now you're like, oh yeah? I'll show you. I'll smash my coffee machine. Whap. Can I get some coffee? You just broke your coffee maker. Oh, shit. Dumbass. Look, even if you hate Keurig right now, and look, there's a lot of progressives out there that are like, hey man, look, we don't like Keurig either because the pods are so incredibly wasteful. So we're not going to use a Keurig machine. They're not out there smashing it. No, what you could do is that, like, if you really want to hurt Keurig, just don't buy a new one. Which I guess this is what they'll do. But hey, go ahead. You know, waste your money. Buy one Keurig and smash it. Buy 10 Keurigs and smash them. You show those liberals. You show them. You show them. Super amused. Now, look, one of the tweets even said, liberals are offended by this video of a Keurig being thrown off a building. I showed you that one. Please retweet to offend a liberal. I'm actually super entertained. I think it's hilarious that you're destroying your own stuff, all in an effort to defend an alleged pedophile. This is the Republican Party. And they have finally completely outed themselves as the bottom of the barrel. Now, again, there's one more hilarious circumstance, or a coincidence here, that I actually mentioned earlier, is the fact that Keurigs are really bad for the environment. The pods add to a lot of waste, right? A lot of the pods end up in these landfills. By smashing your Keurig and no longer doing Keurig K-Cups, you've actually helped save the environment. The final wonderful irony. Awesome. Oh, I love this. Okay. I love my job. Don't ever let anybody say that they don't love their job when they do this. This is the best job in the world. Okay. Let's move on. One more about more. Okay. The Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has called on Republican candidate Roy Moore to withdraw from his race in Alabama. This is over sexual misconduct allegations, including one with a 14-year-old girl. A girl who was 14 at the time. Let me start that again. I completely lost my brain. The Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has called on Republican candidate Roy Moore to withdraw from his race in Alabama over sexual misconduct allegations, which include molesting a 14-year-old girl. Now, 5 women in total have come out and claimed that Moore pursued them while working as a lawyer, and many of these women were still in high school. Now, one of them, Lee Korfman, said she was just 14 years old, below Alabama's age of consent, when Moore brought her back to his home and molested her. Another woman, the newest person to bring allegations, Beverly Young Nelson, said on Monday that Moore had once locked her in his car and sexually assaulted her. Now, one of his former co-workers, Teresa Moore, said, quote, as a deputy DA in Gadsden when Roy Moore was there, it was common knowledge about Roy's propensity towards teen girls. So these allegations, they followed him around for a long time. Apparently, everybody just kind of knew that this guy was a creeper and he'd go around trying to pick up teen girls. Now, in light of these allegations, there's a lot of Republican politicians that have decided to come out against Roy Moore. Now, this includes Mitch McConnell, who told reporters that, quote, I believe the women. Isn't it amazing that it takes a lot of conservative women for Republicans to go, oh my God, I actually believe a victim? Again, this is a party where most of them are like, no, I don't believe the women at all. Hilarious. Now, he also said that Moore should, quote, step aside. Now, Moore responds with a tweet. He said, quote, the person who should step aside is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. He has failed conservatives and must be replaced. Hashtag drain the swamp. So that's like hilariously grade school. Okay. Mitch McConnell's like, hey, man, look, you should step aside. These are serious allegations, and I actually do believe the women. Because look at the stories. 5 women with similar stories, all of around the similar age. And 2 of them are very problematic legally. Maybe even 3 of them, actually, because the 19-year-old was somebody that he had allegedly given alcohol to, and that was, of course, she was underage. But that's the least of his worries, to be honest with you. So, and of course, Moore has to respond with something that's, like I said, incredibly high school. Like, no, you should resign because you suck. Okay, man. Hey, if that's what you're going with. Now, Mitch McConnell isn't the only senator calling him out. You have Senator Steele Daines, Mike Lee. They pulled their support from Moore on Friday. You also had Ted Cruz, who also pulled his support. Wow. Now, their statements, of course, came after Moore said in an interview with Hannity on Friday that the women's reports were false, but he had, quote, dated a lot of young ladies 40 years ago. Asked if he had dated teenagers, he replied, not generally, no. Well, we've got 5 women that disagree and 30 witnesses on record that also disagree. You had a thing for young girls. That's creepy. Now, you also have somebody named Blake Ursey talking to AL.com saying, quote, he would go and flirt with all these young girls. He also added that tales about Moore had been floating around town for at least 3 decades. Quote, it seemed like every Friday or Saturday night you'd see him walking around the mall like the kids did. So again, a lot of these stories are very, very similar. 5 different women, similar stories. And look, none of these women are liberal, okay? Many of them vote regularly for Republicans and for people like Trump, who, by the way, in his Hollywood Access tape, famously said that you can just grab women by the genitals and they'll just let you. It's a bit ironic, and people will rightly point that out, like, hey, wait a minute. So you voted for someone who said that sexual assault is okay, and now you're coming out and saying, well, I was sexually assaulted by this person, and that's why he shouldn't be our senator. Hey, look, it's fair to point out some of that criticism, and I get that. But at the same time, they were assaulted, and that is a terrible thing to have to go through. Personally, I have not experienced it, thankfully, but there are a lot of women out there who had experienced it, and I believe that it's a good thing for them to be able to come out and to tell their story. Now, with that, it's clear that establishment Republicans are starting to distance themselves from Roy Moore. They never liked him in the first place because, look, they had backed Luther Strange. Luther Strange lost. He got crushed because, unfortunately, the electorate in Alabama is so incredibly extreme. To illustrate that, I got some polls for you. There's a Fox News poll in September that showed that 60% of Republicans had an unfavorable view of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. That's up from 33% just a couple of months earlier. So McConnell, not popular now, and he certainly isn't popular before. But another poll released on Monday has Moore with a 10-point lead over his opponent, Doug Jones. There's another poll in which 37% of Alabama evangelicals said the allegations against Moore made them more likely to vote for him. Not less likely, more likely. Like, yeah, we don't care. Oh, you go and touch 16-year-olds and 14-year-olds? Wonderful. We're going to vote for you because we have no moral center anymore. We call ourselves a Christian right, but we're not Christian at all. We're not actually following the words of Christ. I mean, come on. No, we're cool with you touching little girls. Teen girls, I should say. Nonetheless, these are the same people who want to make sure the transgenders don't get into your bathroom because what about the children? They're going to touch the children. What these 3 polls show is that the establishment Republicans, number one, are super unpopular with the base, right? Well, the base loves people like Roy Moore and doesn't care what they did or are alleged to have done in the past. They don't care about sexual assault. They're complete hypocrites. They don't care about women. They don't care about teenagers. They don't care about children. They don't care. They don't care. They would rather vote for this guy over a Democrat. At least he's not a Democrat. At least he's not a Democrat, right? Again, they want to keep the transgender out of the bathroom, but they want to put an alleged molester into the Senate. That's who the conservative base really is. Now, Mitch McConnell and the rest of the Republican politicians, they're actually reaping what they've sown. And look, let me go to Jeff Flake here for a minute. He said in response to a question, hey, would you still vote for, Roy Moore? He's like, no, I would vote for the Democrat over Roy Moore. So look, this is what happens when, by the way, people like Flake no longer have to pander to the base. They know their base is misogynistic. They know their base is, the large chunk of it is racist. They know their base are filled with terrible, terrible people. And so they got to pander to that. Jeff Flake doesn't have to pander to that anymore. So he's like, yeah, I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to be in favor of that. He allegedly molested a 14-year-old. No, definitely not in favor. You'd be crazy. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people in Alabama and other places across the country which are more than happy to do that. And that's gross. And like I said, this is what the Republican base is. They have lost all sense of reality. They're reaping what they've sown, all the demonization of liberals, while also doing the corporatist policies. And of course, the media, right-wing media, creating this alternate reality that has now essentially run away from them. It has turned on them. It is their Frankenstein. This is the monster extreme conservatism has created. This is a base that is so insular to facts, logic, and reason that they would rather throw in with a monster like Roy Moore because they believe that the other guy is that much worse. And that Republicans who actually do take a stand against these extremists, and believe me, Mitch McConnell is nobody's moderate, are also demonized. And this is the world that we live in now, and this is the world that gave us Donald Trump. Now, I've told you before, this is not Donald Trump's fault, okay? This is, like, Donald Trump isn't anything new. He is republicanism. He is conservatism taken to its logical extreme. This is the natural progression of a country, of an ideology that continues to go further and further to the right. He is the id of the modern Republican Party. He is not separate. Republicans and centrist liberals, some Republicans, I should say, establishment Republicans, want to pretend that he is something completely different and off base. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this. He is just so different from what we conservatives actually are. I mean, Jeff Flake, he's like, going back to him, he's like, is this who we are? Is this who we are? Yes, that is who you are. They want to pretend that he's something completely different and that most Republicans don't actually believe that stuff. No. Trump's an aberration. He only won because of Russia and Jill Stein and Bernie Bros. Yes, the centrist liberals all, and that's the answer that they'll come up with. The WikiLeaks is their fault. No. Most Republicans, I think a lot of Republicans are not reasonable, right? A lot of Republicans, the Republican base, adores Trump, and they do support people like Roy Moore. But the centrists are like, no. One of these days, the sensible Republicans will win. The fever's going to break. The fever's going to break. No, it's not going to break. This is the problem, okay? And there's a couple of problems with that narrative from the centrist liberals. That absolves Democrats from losing, right? For one. And number two, it helps their argument of, hey, if we only just moved further to the right, we can meet the Republicans head on and we can do some policy together. We can be bipartisan if we just move more their way. No. Look, these people defend child molesters. There is no middle ground anymore. And the day we consider Mitch McConnell a sane, moderating voice because he's standing up against an accused pedophile, which for some reason is now being touted by the base, you know things are messed up in today's world. That's the problem. And while it's fun to see Republicans fight each other, knowing how both extreme are, how extreme both of them are, and how they represent a major political party, well, look, in the end, this is actually incredibly sad and disheartening. I worry for the future of the Republic if this is what the choice that we have. Okay. I'm going to take a quick 1-minute break. I'm going to rehydrate. So stay right here, and we'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the Nation, right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf with you. We've got more shows, so stay right here. Plenty more show for you guys today, including Omarosa. So, and a very, very important question connected with Omarosa. You're going to love that segment. All right, but first, if you could, please give us a like and a share if you haven't already. Much appreciations to those who do, because it actually goes to help the show. And again, if you want to help the show out, you can go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/TYTNation, and of course, go and fund the show. All right. So let's move on. We have another fun segment planned for you, this time Omarosa. We got a lot of Office Space references today. I love it. Now, President Trump has had some really strange appointments to the White House since he became president, but none so strange as former Apprentice star Omarosa Manigault. Now, look, I don't even know if star is the correct term. I mean, where did she come from? I mean, what has she actually done? And look, I've wondered before, just like with Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, what it is that they actually bring to the table. But in Omarosa's case, the question is, what does she actually do? Now, I'm not the only one here. Elena Plott from the Daily Beast was also very curious. And she writes, there has been some confusion about Omarosa's precise role in the White House. She is formerly the communications director for the Office of Public Liaison. Now, that seems like a very fancy title, and maybe a lot of people are like, ooh, communications director, ooh, the Office of Public Liaison. That sounds very, very important. You're a liaison to the public. Okay. But again, what does she actually do? I mean, to me, that seems like a made-up position. Now, Plott continues. I wanted Omarosa to help me understand what keeps her busy during the workday, and how one of the biggest reality stars of the early aughts, apart from her own boss, was reshaping the administration. So her answer is both hilarious and sad. Now she writes, before Ivanka, before Jared, before even Melania, Omarosa was the most prolific one-name celebrity in Donald Trump's orbit. Her role as a surrogate on his campaign was the reward for 13 years of unshakable devotion. Beginning as America's favorite villain on The Apprentice, where she curried favor with Trump for her bombast. She returned later as a contestant on the spin-off Celebrity Apprentice, where she dumped wine on Piers Morgan's head. Well, to be fair, who does not want to dump stuff on Piers Morgan's head? I do. So, okay. So she's in this position, right? That seems like, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like it's a made-up job with literally no reason to exist. What does she actually do in that job? Again, I'm super curious because as far as I could tell, she hasn't done anything. Now, Plott writes, I don't even think she knows. But on this particular Friday morning, Omarosa simply does not have have time to explain what exactly it is that she does. She can give me 15 minutes at most, she says. Despite the hour-long appointment, quote, it's a very, very busy day. She tells me and asks if I'd rather shadow her in the morning. You can see me in action, she says. Oh, okay. Hey, look, this is going to be good, right? Maybe she's going to do important work and communicating and liaisoning with the public. I don't know. Well, let's see where this goes, right? And maybe I'm being super, super unfair. Maybe she does work very, very hard, and this is going to be a very boring interview, right? Or not. Plot writes, we've got to get a move on. There are menus to finalize and place settings to set. There's a white floral number to change into and 3 different shades of MAC foundation to blend. Okay, so she's explaining what she has to do during the day. Omarosa is. So there's apparently menus and there's place settings and all that stuff. Okay, so maybe she's setting up a very important political dinner. Okay, well, that would make sense, right? Except that that's not what happened. She writes, today isn't just any ordinary day, it turns out. Yes, German Chancellor Angela Merkel is visiting, and the president has last-minute healthcare negotiations with the Republican leadership. But much more crucially, it's bridal luncheon day at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and Omarosa is getting married. Oh, okay, hey, well, congratulations, I guess. But is she literally using work time to plan her wedding? That seems weird. That seems like a waste of resources. I mean, who does that? Well, she apparently does that. Plot writes, in just a few hours, she's hosting her 8 bridesmaids, plus her mother, Teresa Manigault, and fiance, Reverend John Allen Newman. By the way, apparently her mother is called Mama Rosa. Let that sink in for a second, okay? Mama Rosa. Anyway, there, waiters will serve appetizers, entrees, and desserts, presaged by a shamrock-bordered invitation. The luncheon is the kickoff event of Omarosa's bridal shower. She said, now, fellow former Clinton staffer Isha McClendon, who was actually one of the bridesmaids, she said, quote, it was a good way to spend the time with her before the wedding got underway. Okay. So, okay, this has gotten weird. So, her day meeting with the Daily Beast reporter turned into got to get ready for this luncheon that has nothing to do with work, even though you're doing this during work hours. What is it that you do? What is your job? I don't understand. What are you being paid for? I don't get it. I don't see anything in this post, in this story, or any information anywhere that actually points to a literal job that she does. Where is it? Where is it? It's like nobody knows. Nobody knows. Again, the only thing that I know is that Omarosa was the person, and this was done in a Politico article a couple of months ago. I talked about this, where Omarosa was the person that would bring Donald Trump negative articles written by, the New York Times, the Washington Post, whatever, right? She would bring him negative articles, and he would seethe for hours. He'd be like, they said what? Twitter time. That's what would happen. So Omarosa is the one that would constantly piss Trump off. Not from anything that she's done. She thought, oh my God, I'm being such a loyal person. Look at what the press is saying about you. And then he would fire off long-ass denigrating tweet storms. So apparently that's what Omarosa had been doing. Now, John Kelly put a stop to that. He's like, no. Adults in the room only, please. Which, again, I thought he was an adult in the room. And maybe he is, but he's also a terrible person. But nonetheless, okay. So that's what he would do. Or that's what she would do. So, other than that, what is she doing there? Well, not even Elena Plott can figure it out. And she spent an hour with her. She writes, it's tough to sneak in a question to Omarosa about her job, her life, her goals, about where exactly we're heading at this precise moment. Because we are always walking quickly and seemingly aimlessly across the West Wing, and in and out of rooms at the EEOB. At some point, we were looking for a certain Josh, though we don't ever locate him, and I never find out why he's needed. As we knock on doors to one office, and she finally muffles an answer as to what we're doing. Quote, the faith communities, does anyone need to be blessed? What? I don't understand. What is this? Plot continues. Many of her answers go this way, with sentences accomplishing the syntactical feat of never seeming to begin or end, or they begin and end at the same time. Quote, everything, she says when I ask her about the contents of her job portfolio right now. Now, that same article goes on to explain how they run into Peter Navarro. They talk about Dancing with the Stars and all that stuff. And that's it. Plot writes, we walk to a door close to the White House side of the EEOB. Suddenly, Omarosa turns to me and says, quote, well, I've enjoyed this first part. When do you want to do the second part? But wait, that's it. That's it. That was the entire thing. An hour with Omarosa, and you still can't figure out what she does for her job. They did nothing. And what's more interesting is that after that, there was no second part. Plot explains, in a trend familiar to lovelorn folks nationwide, Omarosa ghosted me. Dozens of calls, emails, and texts over the course of several months have gone unreturned. That's very interesting. But again, what does she actually do? Well, Elena Plot doesn't know. And it turns out nobody else in the White Wing, or in the West Wing, or I'm sorry, in the White House, all actually knows. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Quote, after the abrupt end to our day in March, I called a Republican source in constant contact with the White House and asked what they thought Omarosa's job entailed. Quote, no clue. Wait, Hope Hicks let you follow Omarosa around? He asked. No, I hadn't spoken with Hope. So Sean Spicer let you? Ditto. Christ, the source said. No one in the comms department knew a random reporter was walking around the West Wing. And I love this quote. This is why people think we're a shit show. I would say that and many other things. Now, she also reached out, this reporter, to Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders for some answers. She was asked if it was normal for people to throw bridal showers and luncheons in the White House and whether or not Omarosa actually paid for this whole thing by herself. Quote, I have no idea. I will try to track her down. On Friday, a senior White House official did email her saying she did not have a bridal lunch, but did invite her bridesmaids to have lunch with her in the Navy mess hall, which all commissioned officers are allowed to do. Okay, but again, what does she actually do? None of this answers that very basic fundamental question. And it's because there is no answer. Look, Omarosa is a perfect example of governmental waste. She is drawing a salary while doing literally nothing. And this is all because she's good buddies with President Trump. Now, look, you want to talk about waste, fraud, and abuse in the government. This is a perfect example of that. This is not that. It's not about that person on welfare. No, no, no. Trump literally put someone in a job that doesn't actually have any responsibility and doesn't actually do anything just because he happens to like that person. Now, look, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe she has played an important role behind the scenes. But so far, from what I can tell, no one has actually quite figured out what that role really is. Amazing. Okay. So, got a couple more stories here. And one is disastrous. Actually, they're both pretty disastrous. Hold on to your wallets. All right. In a rare moment of bipartisanship, Democrats and Republicans decided to get together to help the most beleaguered and helpless people in America. The banks. Wait, what? The banks? Yes, those people who can hardly agree on an effort to fund the government or give people health care have decided to put aside their enormous differences to help Wall Street firms. Because, of course. Politico reports that a group of senators on Monday rolled out a rare bipartisan agreement years in the making that would relax a number of banking regulations enacted after the 2008 financial crisis. You know, because deregulation definitely wasn't the cause of the financial disaster. How quickly they forget. Now, the deal was driven by Senate Banking Chairman Mike Crapo and a handful of red state Democrats who have long argued that the rules were stifling lending for their rural constituents. Now, let me go back for a second. I don't know if it's Crapo or Crapo, but I'm definitely going to call him Crapo, okay? Because I'm a fucking child. Anyway, now, so these red state Democrats, right? Here come the corporate Democrats working together with the Republicans in order to save the day for the banks. Wonderful. Now, this group included Joe Tester of Montana, Joe Donnelly of Indiana, who are also all up for re-election next year. Mark Warner of Virginia was also there, and I'm not sure, but I would assume Joe Manchin was also probably there. And, of course, Heidi Heitkamp. Now, Politico explains that the compromise would ease regulations on small community banks, as well as several larger lenders that have been subject to stricter oversight because they have over $50 billion in total assets. Hey, look at us. We're small, too. We're small banks. We only have $50 billion in assets. Not millions, billions. We only have $50 billion in assets. We're so small. These regulations, they're crushing us. They're choking the life out of us. Really? Really? Oh, okay, man, that's your story if you're going to stick to that. Now, Senator Sherrod Brown, of course, of Ohio, he's the top Democrat in the Banking Committee, was, I think, the only one that opposed this. Because he said it rolls regulations too far back. But unfortunately, with 9 Republicans, 8 Democrats, and 1 independent senator signing on, the package had a significant head start on the way to advancing through the Senate. Heitkamp of North Dakota, who, by the way, is being primaried. Everybody check out Dustin Peyer, who's running against her, said, quote, "Our bill is an example of how if Democrats and Republicans can put partisanship aside and work together, we can reach real compromises that support the country." But wait, how does this actually support the country? Well, this is more financial deregulation. It's more of the same crap that caused the financial crisis in the first place. There is a reason these rules, these requirements, were put on financial institutions. All this shows is that when Democrats and Republicans come together, it's basically to benefit their rich donors on Wall Street, which is no surprise because, again, look at where the money is coming from. According to Open Secrets, the finance industry has given a total of $370 million so far in lobbying in 2017. Is it any wonder why these politicians are now pushing for more deregulation? I can't tell. So, okay, so here's the thing, right? Now, if you can tell, Politico is literally slobbering all over the idea that it's bipartisan. Oh my God, look at how bipartisan this is. Oh, both sides want it, so it must be good, right? Finally, both sides come to the table to help the American people. Really? Really? No, look, part of it's not their fault, right? Because think about, like, this is the way people in Washington work, right? They've got this bubble, right? And the Washington press is in there as well. And they're like, oh my God, the people say they want bipartisan efforts, and they want the two parties to work together. And look, there's a lot of polling that actually does suggest that, right? That Republicans want to work with Democrats on policies to actually help them. The problem is that this is not policy that actually helps them. They think that deregulating the banks and, helping gigantic corporations, though, they both think that's a fantastic idea. They're so disconnected from regular people. It's not even funny, okay? And look, both Republicans and corporate Democrats and their donors despise regulations like Dodd-Frank. So, look, there's nothing that's stopping these corporate Democrats from supporting more deregulation. And guess what? That deregulation also helps the Trump cabinet. In fact, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said, quote, he's very, very supportive of the agreement, which he praised as, quote, a bipartisan proposal, which I think is terrific. Oh, look, it's bipartisan, so it must be good. Quote, our biggest focus is making sure that community banks and regional banks can grow. Mnuchin said at a Wall Street Journal-sponsored event on Monday night. Now, the agreement, which is released in summary form, would ease mortgage rules for small lenders, attempt to simplify their capital requirements, and let them escape the Volcker rule. The package would also require credit bureaus to provide customers with one free credit brief per year and shield veterans from having certain medical debt from appearing on their credit reports. So that's some of what it does. So in response to that, well, how about we institute a system where nobody has medical debt? Why don't you start working on that, Congress? Instead of these changes that are basically a Band-Aid on problems, while also allowing these banks that are fairly large, I mean, $50 billion in assets, right, escape capital requirements. Now, Politico continues, one of the biggest proposed changes to Dodd-Frank would benefit several banks that have been subject to stricter oversight and stress testing requirements because they have more than $50 billion in assets. A group of the banks and credit card companies branding themselves as the Regional Bank Coalition have been lobbying Congress to scrap the asset trigger and instead have regulators tap banks for stricter oversight based on activities. Instead of that approach, senators who put together Monday's agreement would raise the $50 billion threshold to $250 billion, a move that would benefit banks such as SunTrust and Regions, but not bigger firms such as U.S. Bank Capital One or larger global counterparts. Now remember, we are talking about billions of dollars here, okay? That's still an enormous amount of money. From $50 billion to $250 billion, that's still an enormous amount of money. And if they fail, which is what these stress tests are actually put in to try to prevent, well, and capital requirements, then that's still an enormous part of the economy that has gone under. Again, these banks need to be stress tested because, if you can remember, it wasn't just the big banks that failed. Yes, they failed, and it cost trillions of dollars. But these big ones, I mean, the small ones also relied a lot on the big ones. All these banks were intertwined. And so when one fell, they all kind of fell like dominoes, okay? And it's because they were able to lend beyond their capacity. It was a chain reaction, right? One bank fails, and there goes the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Instead of deregulating banks, maybe we should be increasing regulations on banks, as well as maybe split them up and do both investment banks and commercial banks. I mean, think about it. If you have a problem with banks not lending, which is what they're saying, well, okay, you designate commercial banks whose only purpose is to lend to small businesses and individuals. Whereas your investment banks, they can go ahead and gamble on Wall Street. Separating them, instead of allowing them to be in the same institutions, well, it incentivizes these banks to only think about investment instead of lending to small businesses. You see what I mean? But anyway, instead, like I said, we have a system that does both right now, and unfortunately, most of it's investment. So, will it pass, the bill? Well, given that it has the blessing of corporate Democrats, it's actually far more likely. In fact, a spokesman for Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said he looked forward to reviewing the agreement. So now we have Chuck Schumer that's also on board, or looking like he's on board. Guy's never met a bipartisan agreement he didn't like. So watch out. Oh, look at us Democrats. We're so reasonable, right? We're deregulating Wall Street at a time where Wall Street is incredibly unpopular. Have you learned nothing, sir, from this election? Look, one of the reasons that Hillary Clinton lost is because, number one, she was so tight with the banks. When you run against the banks, when you run against big corporations, it turns out that that might actually help you win. Just saying. But here we have the corporate Democrats cozying up right to them, man. And that's the game that's played here. unfortunately, when we have bipartisanship, usually a couple of things happen, right? Number one, they're stealing money from you. Or number two, they're using it somehow they're using government to somehow benefit corporations. They're deregulating corporations. And so, watch out. Okay, anyway. So let's move on here. According to a new report, the world's wealthiest people still own more than half of all wealth in the world. Well, that's wonderful. Now, according to Newsweek, the annual Global Wealth Report, published Tuesday by Credit Suisse, points out that while the top 1% and 10% of the world's richest saw their share of wealth decline between 2001 and 2008, which makes sense, the trend after the financial crisis swung the other way. They write that from 2013 onwards, the share of the top 5% has been above the level observed from the start of observed at the start of the century, and the share of the top 1% is now significantly above what we estimate for 2000. Basically, what that means is the rich are far richer than they've ever been before. Uh-oh. That can be a little bit of a problem. Now, they point out, while that's happening, the bottom half of adults collectively own less than 1% of all total wealth. The richest decile, the top 10% of adults, owns 88% of all global assets, and the top percentile alone accounts for half of total household wealth. So, the bottom half of everybody, all adults, own less than 1% of the total wealth generated by the world. Now, here we live in the most prosperous time in human history, in all of human history. However, most of that wealth is locked up and concentrated at the top. That's a bit of a problem. Now, look, I know this is global, right? But if you don't see something wrong with this system, then either you're part of the top 10% or you just don't care. You think that wealth inequality isn't going to be a problem at all. You think that, oh, no, it's fine to have most of the wealth go and sit at the top instead of being recycled into the economy. No, that's absolutely fine. Okay, hey, whatever. Look, so right now, we have the ability to make sure nobody goes hungry in the world. I know, it seems weird, right? Well, how come there are hungry people when we have all this food? Well, it's because most of our food ends up getting wasted. In fact, we waste about 72 billion tons of food a year. Now, it sits in landfills or behind restaurants, and there are some companies, of course, that will donate food that they don't need, but there's a lot of others that don't. Hunger is an issue that right now is actually artificial. The scarcity is artificial when it comes to food. Again, we grow and produce enough food to be able to feed everybody, so why don't we? That's because somebody has to make a profit on that food. It's that predatory capitalism, which considers food not a human right. Now, that's just one example. Housing is another. Again, there's a false scarcity here. Now, we have more homes than we have homeless people. There are enough homes in America for homeless people to no longer be homeless. Well, why are there still homeless people? It's because somebody has to make a profit off that home. We don't consider housing as a human right. See, this is the problem. This is a political issue. It's not an issue of scarcity whatsoever. Now, what does this have to do with income inequality? Well, the problem is the system. The same system that sets up income inequality also makes sure that housing, healthcare, and food and water are not considered human rights. They are considered commodities to be bought and sold. Again, that is a problem. You're creating an artificial scarcity. And what you have with wealth is sort of the same thing. Right now, the world has policies all over that benefit the ultra wealthy at the expense of the rest of the world. This is a big, big problem. Okay. Now, again, a lot of this stuff factors into that wealth and income inequality. Now, part of the problem is, like I said, you've got a political class, a class of very elite people that are so disassociated with working people. All they look at is what's going to benefit their donors. We have a system of money and politics that is toxic to the core. So they don't understand regular people's issues, troubles. They don't live in the same circles, in the same neighborhoods, or even have the same kind of discussions. Now, in other countries, people are also having the same problem. Now, what that leads to our politics to do is either people go to the far right or they go left, right? Because, look, they do that to go and look for answers and look for new policies. Because, like I said, the status quo doesn't have any of the answers. The elite's only concern is to continue to hold on to their wealth and power. That is the problem with our neoliberal policies and neoliberal economics. And it's the problem with the establishment. So, again, all they want to do is hold on to their wealth and power. And they've actually done a really good job. Not just holding on to that, but also increasing that as the level of income inequality continues to rise at the expense of the rest of us. I can only go back to what George Carlin had said in his bit about the American dream. He said on your wealth, and this is specifically talking about Social Security and other benefits, their retirement, he said they'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. Polls and results like these show you that that's absolutely 100% true. We have got to do something. We have got to change the system. We've got to get money out of politics, and we have to actually make for a more equal distribution of wealth. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. We'll have, hopefully, Ron Placone back on the show tomorrow. That should be super fun. So we'll have a great story with him. Make sure to give us a like and a share if you haven't already. Check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/TYTNation. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 3 p.m. Eastern, right here, TYT Nation. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. That's about it for announcements. So thank you guys. Love you guys, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Oh, and remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation.